Picture this. It is March 2026. Milan to San Remo. 293 kilometers. The longest single-day race in professional cycling. With 33 kilometers left to the finish line, the best cyclist on the planet goes down. Hard. Pavement. 60 kilometers an hour. In a fraction of a second, what should have been his greatest triumph is suddenly in danger of becoming his most painful defeat. His name is Tadej Pogačar. And what happens next, over the following 8 minutes, is one of the most extraordinary things a human body has ever done on a bicycle. But while Pogačar is picking himself off the tarmac, there is another man at the front of this race. A man built completely differently. A man who has been hunting this same finish line for years. His name is Mathieu van der Poel. And the story of how these two men collide, their bodies, their genetics, their entire biological blueprints, is what we are breaking down today. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never watch a cycling race the same way again. I want you to imagine two vehicles. The first one is a Formula One car, lightweight, aerodynamic, built to maintain insane speeds on clean tarmac for hours without stopping. Every extra kilogram is the enemy. The second vehicle is a rally truck, massive engine, built to absorb punishment, to smash through cobblestones, mud, and gravel, and still find another gear when everyone else has nothing left. Now imagine that both vehicles have been entered in the exact same race. That is Pogačar versus van der Poel. Same sport, same roads, same trophies, and two physiological blueprints that could not be more different from each other. Pogačar weighs 66 kilograms at race weight. Van der Poel weighs 75, 9 kilograms heavier, 8 centimeters taller. Built like the classic specialists of another era, riders who could push enormous gears over cobblestones for 6 hours straight and still sprint at the finish like they had just woken up from a nap. These are not minor differences. These are two fundamentally different body types, each one shaped by genetics and years of training for completely different kinds of suffering. Let's start with the number that makes exercise physiologists go quiet when they say it out loud. A scientific paper published in the Journal of Science and Cycling in 2025 modeled 6 decisive climbs from Pogačar's Tour de France performances. Real climbs, real speeds, real data. The conclusion was stunning. Pogačar sustains an average of 442 watts for approximately 40 minutes on alpine climbs. That is 6.7 watts for every kilogram of his body weight. For 40 minutes, at altitude, on day 15 of a 3-week race. And his modeled aerobic capacity, the maximum amount of oxygen his body can process per kilogram per minute, sits somewhere between 91 and 96. For context, a good amateur cyclist sits at around 65. World-class professionals typically land between 70 and 85. The highest value ever reliably measured in any human being, in any sport, in history, was 96.7. Pogačar is right there. But here is the detail that will completely change how you think about him. In 2026, Pogačar accidentally made his power training zones public on Strava. The data disappeared within hours. But the cycling world had already taken screenshots. His easy aerobic zone, what athletes call the recovery spin, the conversational pace, starts at 237 watts. The power that most well-trained amateur cyclists would be gasping to hold for 20 minutes. That is his warm-up, his recovery ride. He is a diesel engine with a turbocharger bolted on top. He can run all day at sub-maximal output, and when the moment demands it, he can reach another level that very few humans can access. Now let's talk about a completely different kind of power. In Strade Bianche 2021, van der Poel raced for almost 5 hours across the white gravel roads of Tuscany. In the final sprint up the famous climb in Siena, after nearly 5 hours of racing, he peaked at 1,362 watts. That is not a sprint. That is a controlled detonation. And then in the 2024 Tour of Flanders, he did it again. 6 hours and 35 minutes of racing. And in the final sprint, he hit 1,406 watts. 1,400 watts. To put that in perspective, that is enough energy to light an entire house, concentrated in a single pair of quadriceps for the duration of a sprint, after 6.5 hours on the bike. That number's still sitting in the tank. But here's the question nobody asks. How does a human body do that at the end of a 6-hour race? The answer is not just training. It is genetics. Van der Poel possesses an unusually high proportion of what sports scientists call type 2A muscle fibers. Think of them as the hybrid model of human muscle. They hit hard like a sprinter's fibers, but they recover like an endurance athlete's. Most people have either one or the other. He has both. And layered on top of that, his nervous system resets between efforts faster than almost any other professional cyclist on the planet. His body literally flushes fatigue between efforts while other riders are still accumulating it. That combination, explosive power that keeps repeating without falling apart, is what makes him so difficult to race against. You cannot simply wait for him to blow up. He does not blow up. He just keeps coming. Here is something that most people watching cycling do not know. Mathieu van der Poel's grandfather was Raymond Poulidor, the legendary French rider known as the Eternal Second. A man who reached the Tour de France podium 8 times without ever wearing the yellow jersey. His father, Adrie van der Poel, won the Tour of Flanders in 1986, Liège to Bastogne to Liège in 1988, and became cyclocross world champion in 1996. 3 generations, 3 elite cyclists, the same bloodline. The science behind that is real. Twin studies show that between 50 and 72% of aerobic capacity is genetically determined. About 45% of muscle fiber composition is inherited. Mathieu van der Poel did not just inherit a name. He inherited a physiological template that 3 generations of elite endurance performance had already tested and refined. And then he spent his entire life pushing that template to its absolute limit. And that brings us to the 9-kilogram question. And to the rivalry itself. Because this is not just a scientific comparison. These are 2 men who know each other extremely well, who race each other every spring, and who have enormous respect mixed with the kind of competitive hunger that does not leave room for friendship on race day. Before the 2026 Milan to San Remo, Van der Poel was asked about Pogačar. His answer was blunt. If I am 1% below my best, Tadej will be gone. Not 5%, not 10, 1%. That single line tells you everything about what it means to race against Pogačar. And it also tells you exactly what happened on the Poggio climb with 24 kilometers to go. Pogačar attacked. Van der Poel was not at 100%. His hands were compromised from the earlier crash, and that 1% margin was all Pogačar needed. 9 kilograms of extra muscle becomes a liability on a steep climb. Every kilogram you carry uphill is a kilogram your engine has to lift against gravity, for every meter of elevation, for every minute of the climb. That weight advantage is what Pogačar weaponizes. It is also what he has to survive when the road goes flat and the cobblestones start. The 5 most prestigious single-day races in professional cycling are called the monuments. And winning all 5 requires a physiological profile that should not exist in a single human body. Milan to San Remo rewards aerobic endurance and a sharp sprint or climbing punch at the end. The Tour of Flanders rewards explosive repeated power over short, steep climbs for 6 hours. Paris-Roubaix rewards absolute raw watts and the ability to absorb 6 hours of cobblestone punishment. Liège to Bastogne to Liège rewards sustained climbing power over long, steep Ardennes hills. And Il Lombardia rewards pure climbers with the legs to maintain high watts per kilogram for 10 to 20 minutes at a time. 5 completely different physiological demands. And in over 50 years of professional cycling, only 3 riders in history have ever won all 5. Rik van Looy, Eddy Merckx, Roger de Vlamingh, all Belgian, all from a different era. Nobody since de Vlamingh in the 1970s has completed the Grand Slam. Not Hinault, not Kelly, not Valverde, nobody. As of spring 2026, Pogačar has 11 monument victories across 4 different races. The only one missing is Paris-Roubaix. Van der Poel has 8 monuments across 3 races, including 3 consecutive Roubaix titles, the first rider ever to win 3 in a row. He has never won Liège or Il Lombardia. 2 riders, opposite profiles, each hunting the exact monument that their physiology says should be out of reach. Let me tell you what Paris-Roubaix actually does to a human body. Most people think it is just a long bike race on rough roads. It is not. The cobblestones of northern France vibrate at frequencies that travel through the wheels, through the frame, through the handlebars, and into every joint, muscle, and nerve in the rider's body. For 6 hours. That continuous vibration activates the deep stabilizer muscles of the trunk, the shoulders, and the hands in a contraction that never fully stops. It is the physiological equivalent of a 6-hour plank, while pedaling at 400 watts, while navigating whetstones at 50 kilometers an hour. And on top of that, the cognitive demand of reading the road, avoiding the worst sections, holding position in a group through gaps that close in milliseconds, exhausts the central nervous system in ways that never show up on a power meter. But they show up at the finish line. Here is the paradox Pogačar faces specifically. His 66 kilograms means less impact force per cobblestone, which helps. But it also means less momentum on flat sectors, which hurts. Heavier riders with more absolute power can bulldoze through sections that lighter riders have to fight harder to navigate. Van der Poel's body is purpose-built for this race, and yet Pogačar finished second at Roubaix in 2025. He nearly won it. Which is the point where the science runs out and something else takes over entirely. Before I close, I want to tell you about a Norwegian teenager named Oscar Svensson. In 2012, a sports science paper documented something extraordinary. Svensson, 18 years old, had his aerobic capacity measured in a laboratory. The result was 96.7 milliliters per kilogram per minute, the highest reliably recorded value in any human being, in any sport, in history. By every physiological model available, Svensson should have become the greatest cyclist who ever lived. He left elite cycling before his early 20s. Years later, when asked about it, he said something that sports scientists still quote today. The talent is in the head after all. The physical is just a bonus. Pogačar's estimated aerobic capacity approaches that same ceiling. Van der Poel's sights in the mid to high 80s. By the numbers alone, Pogačar has the aerobic advantage in almost every scenario. But cycling is not contested in a laboratory. It is contested on roads where crashes happen 33 kilometers from the finish line. On cobblestones where 9 kilograms of extra muscle becomes a weapon. On climbs where genetic inheritance and decades of training collide under pressure, in real time, with another great champion trying to stop you. Here is where all of this lands. We are living through something genuinely unprecedented. 2 athletes, each with a physiological profile that the textbooks say should limit them to a specific kind of racing, are both refusing to accept those limits. In 2025, Pogačar became the first rider since Eddy Merckx to win 3 different monuments, the Tour de France, and the World Championships in the same year. He is also the first rider in history to podium all 5 monuments in a single season, something Merckx himself never did. And the only man who might stop him from completing the Grand Slam is a Dutch rider who was born into cycling greatness, grandson of a legend, son of a monument winner, a man who produces 1,400 watts after 6 hours of racing, and whose body flushes fatigue between efforts while everyone else is still suffering. Every few decades, Sport produces two athletes who exist in the same moment, hunting the same prize, and forcing each other to become something greater than either of them could ever be alone. This is one of those moments. I am Sebastian from the Injury Breakdown. And if you want to understand exactly why Pogacar's aerobic capacity is the number that terrifies physiologists, the next video is already waiting for you. It is called Pogacar's VO2 Max Explained, the number that terrifies physiologists. I will see you there.